can you give me a massive, massive Philia welcome as I give you Maya Forster. Come on!
Thank you. All right. I'll get in trouble if I don't get off the stage in 10 minutes. So, I'm Maya Forstater. I'm worthy of respect in a democratic society, and so are all of you. So I'm going to tell you my story quite quickly, just in case anyone hasn't heard it. But I'm also going to try and kind of weave in everyone else's story and sort of see how that works with all the different waves. So I'm going to ask you to wave. So in 2017, I was working at a think tank, and like a lot of people at that time, I started to hear about this sex and gender thing, and I thought, something's wrong here. Is there anyone here who started paying attention in 2017, that same time as me? Okay. You were, or was there anyone here who's before 2017? You were the early adopters. And yeah, Julie Bindel, early adopter.
Susan Hawthorne,
So in 2017, it started pricking on my consciousness, and I was asking, you know, why is the government saying that men can be women? Why are the women who want to have calm, clear conversations about this being punished? Why are people saying that they're awful, terrible people? And are Stonewall really the bad guys? And so, you know, I went and educated myself, as they say. Started reading Mumsnet, read things by Kathleen Stock, who might be here. Read things by Jane Clare Jones, who might be here. And Transgender Trend. And Fair Play for Women. And I watched videos of the meetings by Women's Place. And I watched Posey Parker's videos. And I watched Magdalene Byrne's videos. Who here was doing all that in 2018? Yeah, it was building. So in September 2018, I went to a protest. This was the first time I'd come out and met people in real life. And I was quite nervous. So I made some cookies to share. Top tip, makes friends. It was outside Westminster Magistrates Court, and it was where Linda Bellos and Venice Allen were being prosecuted for malicious communication for broadcasting a meeting a bit like this. And so that's where it all started for me. And I met other women, and I started to feel angrier, and I started to feel braver. And I tweeted about it. And someone at my workplace complained. And over the course of the next 6 months, I lost my job. And that was the worst part of the whole thing. It was that 6 months, because I was on my own, I was isolated, I was trying to negotiate to keep my job, and I didn't have anyone with me. And at the end of it, I lost my job. And I tweeted about that. And then the feminist lawyers arrived, like fairy godmothers. There's a few of them in the audience, I've seen them. And so I sued for belief discrimination, and I crowdfunded it, which was the scariest thing I've ever done. Did anyone here contribute? Thank you all so much. I hope you think it was good value. And the thing the case had to do was to show that my belief was worthy of respect in a democratic society. And in the first round, I lost. On December 18th, I lost, and December 19th, J.K. Rowling tweeted about it. Come on. And then for the next 2 years, I had to battle that, and every lie that could be told about me was told about me. But eventually, I won, and I won for me. That was important. But the most important thing is it sets a precedent. It sets a precedent that you can't be discriminated against at work or as a user of a service because you believe that sex is real and important. And also, importantly, you can't be discriminated against for not sharing the belief in gender ideology. And that's probably even more important than you can't be discriminated against for being gender critical, because it means that you have protection even if you never go to a feminist conference, never read a book, if you haven't heard anything about this, and you just go, hold on a second, that's a man. I don't believe this. You're protected. And it's working. So there are other cases that followed mine. There's Alison Bailey's. Joe Phoenix coming up. James S's, Rachel Mead's, the Green Party cases. And there are some, we haven't won them all. Raquel Rosario Sanchez had a really important case and she lost, and we won't win all of them. But I would like to give a round of applause to Raquel for her bravery. And one of the important things about my case is it's based on European Convention of Human Rights. So although it's not a precedent in the rest of Europe, it's persuasive. And I've heard last week, I think, about the first Forstater case in Europe, which is going to be in Norway. And I think that'll be the first of many, so that's important. But as the employment lawyers say, it's better to have a good job than a good tribunal case. And so the most important thing is that employers understand this and that they can use it to stop these processes before they start, to stop the complaints in their track. And one of the most gratifying things that I hear every time I come out is that this is working, that people are telling me they say Forstater and it's like Expelliarmus and it makes the dementors go away. And the other thing I'm hearing is that people are finding each other in workplaces. Because they're less scared of speaking out, they find their colleagues in their workplace and WhatsApp groups, Yammer groups, whatever people have. And this week I heard in a very important sector, they've launched a formal sex equality network. I'm not going to say what sector, but watch this space. I think that'll be the next move. You have pride groups. You can also have gender critical groups in the workplace. And also anyone who works in charities, they're meeting at lunchtime here. Find your people. So in 2020, I co-founded Sex Matters, to help people to understand the law, to use the law, and where necessary, to change the law. And I recruited Helen Joyce, which is, I don't know if she's here, best decision I've ever made. So come by and find us upstairs and pick up our resources. What we do is simple, clear, what does the law say, how can you use it? So we do pronouns, guidance for schools, toilets, really important. Don't let anyone tell you toilets don't matter. And single-sex services. And one of the big projects we're doing right now is a survey on experience of being gender critical at work. We want to hear the good things and the bad things. We want to map the different sectors, find out what the issues are for people at work, and to be able to show that this is not just me, it's not just Joe Phoenix, not just Kathleen Stock, it's hundreds and thousands of women. And I know that because they talk to me, but we need to kind of collect it and put it together as data and evidence. So please pick up that postcard and do the survey. Support us, join our mailing list. But also, we're just one of the organisations that are working on this. There's Fair Play for Women, there's LGBT Alliance, there are the single-issue organisations like Keep Prison Single Sex, and there are the professional ones. So CAN SG, which is, you will never remember that name, but that's the doctors. So, people in all different sectors and areas, and every political party and none have organising groups. And Filia. I really want to say thank you to Filia for holding open this space that we can talk about this. I don't know where Lisa Marie is, but just huge. Filia and their board have been brave where so many other organisations haven't been brave. So whose first time Filia is it? Lots. Brilliant. Come back. Who brought cookies? You're doing this wrong. So one thing I have to say is Sex Matters is not a feminist organisation. We're just much more basic than that. We're about biology, we're about reality, we're about everyone's human rights. And the most important one of those, I think, is freedom of speech. Everything else flows from that. Feminism is important. You can't talk about it without freedom of speech. And I knew that. I knew that, you know, as a kind of theoretical good thing, but having been through this, I know it in my gut. I'm a free speech absolutist. And I'm proud that my judgment protects people who I think are wrong, who are wrong-headed, who are offensive, who are hurtful. That's what freedom of speech means. It means protecting people that we disagree with. And so I think a large part of my job is holding open as much space as possible for thought and debate. And that includes feminists, but it includes other people as well. Because people who are concerned about this issue are concerned because of their children. They're concerned because of science. They're concerned because of their religion. They're concerned because it corrupts organizations. They're concerned for all these different reasons. They're concerned for gay rights. And fundamentally, I think they're concerned because they want to be able to speak the truth. I want to speak to anyone and everyone, and I understand that there are other groups that don't do that. There are other groups that are more focused. There are other people that have different boundaries, and that's fine. I think we can all do different things, and it's complementary. And because of that, something really amazing has happened in the UK over that period that I've been describing. 13 million people have changed their mind. So, yeah. The British Social Attitudes Survey, run by NatSen, where Nancy Kelly used to work, asks this question about, do you support the Gender Recognition Act? And in 2016, 58% of people did. By 2019, it was down to 53%. And in 2021, it was down to 32%. So, "25% of the population have changed their mind." This is huge, and it's because of all of the conversations that we've been having. So we really are making progress. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it. Sorry, sometimes it doesn't feel like it. But there's so much organizational capture, and we need to pull up the Japanese knotweed. And the response to this is getting more and more vicious. I sat in a pub on Friday with Helen Joyce with 20 protesters protesting because we were having a drink in the pub. Yeah. I've been removed from Twitter for tweeting a picture of a Mermaid staff member. I mean his member. And every individual who speaks up is facing this, even with Forstater. It's also exhausting. And the smears and the guilt by association is also exhausting about who you've talked to, who you've been on a panel with, and it's all designed to shut us up, and I won't be shut up. We are making such amazing progress, so whoever inspires you, be inspired, be a bit braver, keep talking. And this was something on Twitter, so we made it into a postcard. It says, "May the Forstater be with you."
I mean, you can see behind me a panel of some of the most, many of these women are women that I've loved and admired for decades, and they are some of the most formidable and inspirational women in the movement and in the world, in my opinion. They are going to be introduced by the person hosting this panel. So this is the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to hand over, and they'll be introduced as this panel runs. But I want to lay it on thick for the person who's going to introduce them. They're a writer and broadcaster. and a journalist. She's been active in a global campaign to end violence against women and children since 1979, and has written extensively on rape, domestic violence, sexually motivated murder, prostitution, trafficking, child exploitation, and stalking, and the rise of religious fundamentalism and its harm to women and girls. And I have read just about everything that she's written, and it's all fantastic. I am in love with the name of the session, which is Misogyny, Why Won't It Die? I mean, yes, let's just kill it today, why not? Then we've got day 3 to work out what happens next. And as I say, she's joined with this phenomenal lineup. Can I please, if we don't get a standing ovation now, I don't know what feet are for. Please, can you give it me very, very, yes, exactly, already. Let's stand before we even clap. A massive round of applause. Julie effing Bindel!
I'm so pleased to be here, and I just want to repeat the thanks that Maya gave there about Hilla organising this wonderful event. It's the absolute event of the year, and I can't imagine the impact that it has globally on the women's liberation movement, on feminists, on individual women, and in particular on young women and new feminists. And for that, I'm very grateful. And I want to say a little tiny something about Forstater. Not the person, but the case. Obviously, Forstater is wonderful, goes without saying. But I threatened to sue Nottingham City Council recently for dropping me for cancelling a talk on male violence against women in one of their public libraries that was targeted for closure in a working class area. And they decided, the Blue Fringe mob decided that they shouldn't platform me during the holy month of Pride, or the holy year of Pride, because it seems to be every month. It was offensive to the trans community to have me talking about male violence. So we had the event in the car park, and then we threatened to sue them, and they caved in. But what's really interesting is, of course, we used the judgment in Forstater, and some of you will know that what they say is that they accept some speech as unacceptable. For example, Nazism. And what they argued was that my views are closer to Nazism than Forstater. Yeah. So we're in a bit of competition now.
You win.
Well, I'll win. In the end, they caved in. And that's the kind of crux of this panel. It's about resilience and resistance and building on feminism, building on the fact that we have, as a movement, resisted male violence. We've resisted the normalization of male violence and of patriarchy. This did not begin with the gender issue. This did not begin with that argument. This debate is part of that. It's only part of that. It has to be broader. It's a misogynistic backlash. They hate us. These trans activists are just masquerading as progressives, and it gives the opportunity for men that hate us on the left and on the right to call us cunt, but they use the term TERF. So we all know that. And so, in that spirit, I want to talk to these amazing women about their own journey through the resistance as feminists, as women that will not have it, that are not having it. And the first person that I'm going to speak to is Lucy Massoud. And Lucy, many of you will know, is a former firefighter and a trade unionist. And actually what's really important, I think, about Lucy's story, part of it anyway, is that she was pivotal in campaigning to get single-sex provision for female firefighters. Because many of you won't know, but there are female firefighters that had to change tampons in the back of fire engines, that had to share toilets with men because they were an afterthought. And Lucy campaigned in that vein to get that single-sex provision. Then look what happened. Single-sex provision changed into gender expression. Lucy's now a family barrister. she's a troublemaker, and I want to ask her this question. Lucy.
Yes, dear.
Clearly, you were always a troublemaker. I've spoken to your mother. When did you start to fight back against what was happening in the fire service, and what were the consequences for you?
It kind of came out of nowhere for me. As you said, I'd been involved with the campaign for single-sex spaces in the fire service, and I'd been lucky enough to work in London. And when I started at the London Fire Brigade, we'd pretty much won that fight already. So I was lucky enough to benefit from what women had done before me in the fire service. But yet, when I joined the fire service in '95, it was only London at that point that had managed to secure female-only spaces on fire stations. Every other brigade in the country still had, to a degree, mixed services. And actually in Scotland now, what they've done is the few single-sex spaces they did have for firefighters, female firefighters on station, when they built new fire stations, they converted them into mixed sex. And when the union complained, they used the GRA and the FBU support of the GRA to justify changing female-only fire facilities into mixed space. So when I joined the fire brigade, I kind of bumbled along as a trainee for a few years, and then I became very involved in the union. And I worked as a firefighter and a full-time firefighter and a semi-part-time but almost full-time union member. And then Grenfell happened, and that made everything just escalate. So I was very, very busy. Around about that time, I became aware of a woman called Kiri Tunks, who was also a trade unionist, and she'd got herself into a... Absolutely. I didn't really know too much about her, but a colleague of mine had told me that she was being disciplined by her union for comments she'd made, and advised me to reach out to her and tell her why I thought, as a firefighter, single-sex spaces were so important. So I reached out to her. She ended up inviting me to speak at a Women's Place UK meeting, and then off the back of that, I got a phone call from the BBC asking to appear on Radio 4 in the morning. So I went on, and it was to talk about women-only shortlists and if trans men should be on those women-only shortlists. And, at the time, I was still very new to the debate, so I was still kind of, where there's genuine trans women, and I was, just behind the ears.
You were being kind.
I was being kind. I was hashtag be kind, absolutely. So I didn't think it would be too controversial. I'm very polite. Generally, I'm quite reasonable. So I went along, and I was on the, it was a debate, and it was a debate between me and this chap called Emily Brothers, who was a trans woman who I believe had been a Labour MP or councillor and prospective candidate. So I started this debate live on BBC 4 radio in good faith. Bearing in mind, I'm sure there's probably a good couple of million people listening at any given time to that radio station. And then within about 20 seconds, Emily Brothers had accused me of transphobia. And I had said nothing controversial at all. And I kind of sat there thinking, right, I'm a senior member of the FBU, I'm a firefighter, I'm live on radio being accused by someone of being transphobic when I've said absolutely nothing wrong. So I'm either going to sit here and kind of do the, I respect trans people and I respect their rights and, please give me your crumbs, or I'm going to fight back. So very quickly, I just went into combat mode and just... brutally brought him down. By the end of the interview, you could hear us off mic arguing, and him calling me transphobic and me saying, no, I just have a different opinion to you. And that's kind of where it all escalated from there. Off the back of that, Pink News did 2 stories, hatchet stories on me. The Eye magazine did a hatchet story on me. And it was, for a few seconds, it was like, oh my God, like, what have I done? But actually, at the end of it, I came out of it and it was fine, and I felt a better person for it, and the amount of support I got from people was really quite uplifting. What I didn't realise, and I was only to find out 2 years later, was off the back of that interview with BBC Radio 4, Stonewall had decided to contact my employer, the London Fire Brigade, and essentially try and get me sacked. And this was a year before Alison Bailey. So I did a subject information request, got all the emails, which you've seen, Julie. We've had a good gossip with them.
Very interesting reading.
Went through all the emails that Stonewall sent to my employees, the London Fire Brigade, and to each other working employees with Stonewall, where they accused me of being transphobic, a hate preacher, just horrible things they said about me. Demanded a meeting with the London Fire Brigade, which took place, and essentially demanded that I be sacked. Now, bearing in mind, when they made this request, it was probably about 6 months after the Grenfell tragedy. So the London Fire Brigade was, had a lot on their hands, but Stonewall thought the most important thing to them at the time was to try and deal with me, because I dared to say that there were 2 sexes as opposed to 1,500. But it just really shows you the priority of Stonewall at the time. By the time they had the meeting with the London Fire Brigade, they wouldn't have known this, but I'd actually left the service. I'd gone off to be a barrister. But I kind of think, what would have happened had I still worked there? As it happened, I was a senior member of the FBU, and they would have been very stupid to try and get rid of me because we would have been out the door on strike. But had I just been a firefighter at station with no protection, I'm under no illusion that I would have been sacked, thanks to Stonewall. But I'm glad I fought back. I'm glad I didn't back down, and here I am today.
Yep. We're going to hear from Hilla Kerner, a good friend, and she's been involved with Vancouver Rape Relief Collective since 2006. And, Vancouver Rape Relief is very, very close to my heart. I've spent time with you over the years. It got me into trouble in 2004, big, big trouble. Because I wrote an article praising Vancouver Rape Relief in The Guardian that had fought off a case, a terrible case brought by a trans-identified male who wanted to be involved with rape survivors and victims, just a bloke, basically. And waiting in the wings were our version of Liberty, whatever, taking this test case through the court. And it was 20 years plus of litigation, was it not? And when I wrote that piece, 2 things happened. 1, I became instantly transphobic, and that the rest is history. And 2, and this is much more important, I became friends with Vancouver Rape Relief, and they are wonderful. I'm sure that many of you have heard the most terrible misogynistic backlash, bullying, and campaign against you for remaining committed to fighting male violence, ending prostitution, and staying single-sex and focused on women and girls. Tell us about that.
Julie has been a friend of Vancouver Rape Relief, and a personal friend and a political friend, and really made us love, admire, and respect the British feminists way, way before we came here. Because she's amazing, and from her we know that you're amazing. I'm going to talk about our fight in the context of rape. As women in the world, as female in the world, we are all under the threat of rape. Unlike other forms of male violence against women, for example, prostitution, personally, my race and my class are protecting me from being in prostitution. For me as well, practicing lesbianism means that I don't need to worry about an abusive husband. But the rape, the fear of rape, the threat of rape is very much a destiny of any woman, any girl who are born female. And those of us who haven't been raped, it's not because we are special. It's because the men who have access to us, our fathers, our boyfriends, our neighbors, our doctors, our teachers, our taxi driver, the stranger man in the street, choose not to do that. And that's in the essence, in my mind, patriarchy. We are not raped. 1, when men choose not to rape us, and 2nd, if we're together. This is probably one of the safest place for women right now in October 23, 10:16 UK time. When we're together, we are safer. And of course, that's an extension of the direct actions that we have been acting since the second wave of the women's liberation movement of transition houses and rape crisis center. So we're dealing with a general backlash against our political work in the context of the women's liberation movement fight against rape. Talk very shortly about that, and then about the particular backlash that rape relief is facing. So I think it's true all over the world, or at least all over the Western world, and we heard it, a version of it yesterday at the rally. The women's movement achieved great laws on rape. The definition of consent and involuntary consent has been sharpened and sharpened, and endless reforms and Supreme Court judgments. But it's a mirage, because in reality, men know they can rape women and children with impunity. And that's one backlash. And here and there, once in a blue moon, there is a man who is charged. Rarely it's a white man, but there is a Harvey Weinstein. There are men that make us, as a society, think that men are being held accountable, but we know from our own life, it's just not true. Men know that they can rape women and children with impunity, and it's a universal global situation for every girl and women who are born as female and raised as girls to their adulthood. So the fact that we have good laws, but men are not being held accountable, it means that as a society, we have society and a criminal justice system that in theory is against rape, but not against rapists. The second point is, the second element of the backlash against our fight against rape is a trade-off. It's okay that some women will not be raped, some women will be protected, but all our understanding on what consent and involuntary consent is flushed out the toilet when it comes to women in prostitution and pornography. Those women, it's okay to rape. So that's the second way of undermining our fight against rape. The third element is rape now became, and unfortunately, including among the rape crisis centers, there are 41 rape crisis centers in Canada, 40 of them will treat rape not as a terrible, devastating force that keep us all in line, a very, very brutal act of patriarchy, but something that one person is doing to another person. Complete degendering, and as I said, unfortunately, the anti-rape movement, the violence against women movement, who is no longer violence against women, it's gender-based violence, completely is co-opting with that. And there is another backlash that we're particularly facing, but in theory, all rape crisis centers are facing, is we keep records. We keep every woman who told us about her incest, about her prostitution, the John and the pimp, about sexual harassment, about the rape, about the battering husband. We keep a record of what she told us. It's 49 years of thousands and thousands of women who are telling us their truth. And when I'm talking, by the way, about these women, it's our women, it's me. I also have, we call it attack sheet. I have a few attack sheets. I am a woman in this world, cannot get away from male violence. So we keep this record as a political tool. But the deal that we have with our callers is total, utmost, ultimate confidentiality. So one of backlash that we keep facing, and it's fresh because I talked last night with my women at the Rape Crisis Center, is that the rapist, the rare rapist who is charged, the defense lawyer as a strategy to attack the credibility of the victim, are seeking the third-party record, what we kept that she told us, to show indiscrepancies. And I know you all know I'm saying the basic, but I tell my stories again and again. My fellow collective member can testify to that. I repeat my jokes. They're never quite the same. There is always something I say different, I post somewhere else, I say maybe instead of yes. So it's very easy to show indiscrepancies. And the attack is that we never agree to give those records. A feminist did fought and won that it's not automatically will be given, the judge need to decide. And to protect herself, I am coming to court with an empty envelope because I don't want to be ruled as contempt in court for no reason, but it's an empty envelope. The defense and the judge thinks the attack sheet is in there. My lawyer knows the truth, but she pretends that she thinks it is there because she has to comply. And every time our lawyer, feminist lawyer, Gwendolyn Allison, is succeeding in convincing the court that there is a greater interest on protecting the confidentialities and giving those records to court. So that's the general backlash against rape. The backlash against us, actually the most recent wave 5 years ago started with a union, the BC Federation, Canada is provinces, BC Federation of Labour, the umbrella organization of all the labor unions in British Columbia, passed a resolution not to support us, asking all their affiliation of the supporter not to support a transphobic organization as Rape Relief. Since then, Parliament is unofficially boycotting us. We're not invited to any Parliament conversation about our bread and butter, rape, wife bettering, prostitution. Mainstream media is boycotting us. And the most painful betrayal, the feminist movement is betraying us. We are boycotted in anti-poverty coalition, feminist coalition, when they form part of the basis of unity is that Vancouver Rape Relief cannot participate in the events. And Women's Shelter Canada, the association for all the transition houses, refused our membership. Canadian Women's Foundation, who is responsible on distributing funding to anti-violence organization, is refusing to give us money. So it's been brutal and painful, but we've never had so much support. So ironically, when the city fight happened, 2019, the city of Vancouver decided not to fund us, and we might have kept it quiet as a strategy, not to bolster our enemies, but the enemies kept it loud, so we had to comply. So many individual ongoing donations from women around the world are committed to sustaining us. That's why we were able to pay for tickets to the UK. So my most positive announcement is that we took all this money, that is no string attached, we get to do whatever we want with it, and consistent with the All Collective, and that in 1980 decided to buy a house, a transition house, a shelter, that we can house whomever we want, and we finished paying the mortgage in 2007. A few months ago, we used all the donation that women supporting all over the world saying thank you for standing up for women, and a few men. We put a down payment for a space that will be our public space to do public education, because every institution now in Vancouver has all kinds of regulation and rules protecting them from renting us space to speak about rape, wife bettering, and prostitution. So we're going to have a second space. One is a private for women and who's staying in our transition house and rape victim, and one is a public. We're going to call it the second space, second space, and it will allow us to do whatever the fuck we want, to talk to whomever the fuck we want, to do our own education in our own terms.
Now, what can I say about Rosie Duffield? She's a member of Parliament for the Labour Party. Since 2017, she serves her constituents who love her. And in 2019, I saw her give a speech. I think many of you did here, UK-based. Maybe it went viral internationally also, where she spoke about domestic abuse and coercive control. And it made you cry and get enraged at the same time. This is Rosie. And of course, she has spoken out because she's a feminist and she is concerned about women's sex-based rights. Guess what happened next? Rosie, over to you.
Hello. Lucy's been called a hate preacher. I've also been called a hate preacher. And I think we get these letters to our employers, almost straight away. So the weird thing about the Labour Party or being a politician is you're not really employed. So it's this kind of strange hybrid between being self-employed and being employed. You follow the whip, so you're told what to do. And, you know, you get called in by the chief whip if you've been naughty, and in my case, that's quite often, actually. But I mean, I know what's really disappointing. I'm trying to be upbeat. It's really hard. And at the LGBA conference, I was so negative. I'm sorry. But I'm just telling the truth about the situation out there at the moment, or for me in the party. But I have colleagues, one particular colleague who I looked up to so much, who was a kind of pioneer for lots of reasons. And they knock on the door of the chief whip most weeks and complain about me, complain about the fact that I've still got the whip, i.e. that I'm still allowed to be a Labour MP because I am such a hate preacher, or I'm such a transphobe, all of that kind of stuff. And I just think about my colleagues, and there are many of them, including one who I was friends with until Thursday, who are accused of sexual harassment and sexual abuse. I don't see a line outside the chief whip's office knocking on the door saying that person hates women. And women are still only a third of Parliament, but 51% of the Labour Party and 51% of the population. But yet, this small group of people who decided at some level that we hate them, which we don't. We feel desperately sorry for them. As far as I can tell, most women feel the same. You know, when you are looking at a sort of generation of young women who are not even saying, I'm a boy, they're saying, I'm not a thing, I'm not a sex, I'm not a woman. That's bloody terrifying. And why are they doing it?
Yeah.
Are they not doing it because they know that the minute they get breasts in a woman's body and they start bleeding, men are going to look at them differently? We are kind of targets. They don't have conversations necessarily to our faces. They're looking our bodies up and down. And you have to suddenly adapt to that when you're 13 and 14. And isn't, you know, all the stories about rape and the statistics going up during lockdown and violence against women and the Sarah Everard case. If you were a young girl growing up now, what are you going to do? You're going to hide what your body is. You're going to call yourself not a thing, not a woman, non-binary. It's not a thing. And yet, in Parliament, we get petitions to include non-binary as a legal gender. It's undefinable in law. So I don't know how we're supposed to do that. So, you know, this has not been fun being a Labour MP and trying to fight for women's safe spaces, but it won't stop me doing it. But I can't guarantee to you that I'll be able to speak as a Labour MP for 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years, because there are people micromanaging my kind of exit on an hourly basis. There are people looking at everything I tweet, my close friends, you know, who I hang out with, the fact that Joe Rowling quite likes me, you know, all of those things are sort of reasons to cancel me, and it's almost a full-time job for some of these men to try and get rid of me, to try and get me out of the Labour Party. So I don't know how long I'll have a platform, but I have got one, and my sisters here have got one. And if we don't speak using this platform, all of the working class women that the Labour Party is supposed to represent, the women in the unions, I said unison by mistake there, but actually Unison was my union from the age of 16 when it was NUPE, and they just voted through a motion which was trans women are women, trans men are men, and I've left my union. I've left my union because of it. I don't know that they've noticed that I've left, so when it comes to my Christmas card this year, I'm not going to be able to ask them to pay for it. And there are some brilliant people in Unison, and I was a woman who was a teaching assistant who needed Unison, and there are millions of women out there who need those unions. But if we're not here in Parliament defending women in prisons, who are mostly, let's face it, working class women, who are, you know, women in unions who are working class women, what the bloody hell are we for? It looks as though my leader thinks that if we misgender someone, we should be able to be arrested. But if you're a woman or a girl, in what is supposed to be a safe space. If you go into a toilet because you're trying to get away in a nightclub from your partner, which we've all done at some point when we're young because they're drunk or they're trying to, if something happens, if there's a bloke pursuing you and you try and go into a safe space, your every instinct as a woman knows when there's a man in your space. They could wear as much lipstick as possible, but you know when you see and encounter a man, right? I'm not going to pretend they're not one. And I don't think we should be teaching young girls or women, any women, to ignore their instincts.
Yep.
And if that means that I end up in prison because I call Eddie or whoever a man, so be it.
Do you think they underestimated her? Thank you, Rosie. We'll visit you in prison. I'll bring the salami. We'll brew our own hooch. We'll all share a cell. It'll be fun. Okay, do you want to hear from the world's greatest tennis champion ever? Right? She just happens to be a lesbian and a feminist. And I'm going to tell you a fun fact here, because it's not a secret, because it was in all the newspapers. That when a few of us had lunch with J.K. Rowling, we had a few drinks and thought it was, I know, how dare we? And I actually thought it would be fun to WhatsApp video Martina in the middle of the lunch. She didn't pick up because she's very sensible. She hadn't done her hair. And we all just sang and shouted. What turned out to be obscenities, really, but in a friendly way. Anyway, I mean, speaking personally, seeing Martina Navratilova on TV playing at Wimbledon as an out lesbian was everything to me. It meant we had a role model. We had someone who was standing up and not giving a damn. When she was compared to the conventionally feminine tennis players, most of whom were her friends, and she was called a dyke, she was called ugly and a freak, she soldiered on and she became the best of everything. Because when she was planning on coming out in the early 1980s as a lesbian, she defected from what was then Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic, and she was waiting to get her US passport before she gave her interview to come out. She was never in the closet, ever. And she was outed by, a journalist who thought he'd got a great scoop. She lost every single penny of her sponsorship. Every penny. But she prevailed. Now, I had the privilege of meeting Martina when I interviewed her about 12, 13 years ago, and we became friends. And, when people ask all of us, I think, anyone in this room that has, I suppose, been put through the mill with the trans fuckery, they say, do you regret it? Well, hell no, or we'd have to regret being feminist. But look at the friends we make. Look at these friends, So, I had a little chat. Well, I had quite a long chat with Martina, and we're going to now have 10 minutes of her brilliance, but then she's going to be played in full on a loop later today, wherever the films are played, so you can see her in total. But here's Martina.
Speaking of lesbians, as we often do, how did you deal, because this conversation is about resilience and about how we deal in a positive way with things that are thrown at us. How the hell did you deal with the anti-lesbian and misogynistic hatred that you got from some quarters, because you were universally loved, as always, but from some bigots, when you came out in the early days, in the early 80s?
Well, I didn't really see it face to face. It was kind of the bigger picture when I was introduced to come on the court. Everybody was cheering when Chris Evert was introduced, or Ivan Gulagong. But when I came out onto the court, it was muted applause. There was some jeers, there were some whistles, and it was hard not to take it personally. But I realized it was mostly because I was gay. And some of it was because I was winning too much, perhaps. But, Roger Federer never got that kind of welcome, right? Nobody jeers when Roger Federer walks on the court. So, or Rafa Nadal, even people, if they're not big fans or they're in the Federer corner, they still cheer when Rafa walks on the court. But that was not the case with me. So it was hard not to take it personally, but it wasn't. It was this body of, the audience. So one-on-one, nobody ever came to me and called me, "You're nothing but a dyke." Nobody said that to me, but I heard then friends or women that I met later, people were saying that about me in the audience, but I never heard it. So I would have, of course, told them off if it had been face to face. But I was just trying to win over the audience by who I was. I thought that was enough, and at the end they were on my side, but it took a while. But I was doing what I love, playing tennis, and nobody could keep me from that. So I was lucky in that front. And again, after coming from Czechoslovakia, leaving my country, this kind of stuff wasn't gonna bother me. What bothered me was not seeing my family for 4 years.
Right.
That was the tough part. Somebody I don't know, thinks I'm whatever they want to call me. Who cares?
And that was what was so brilliant for us young lesbians at the time when you were playing at Wimbledon and we were watching you, and we were really inspired by the fact that you got on with it. You were globally admired, respected, loved. You were a champion. And all of a sudden we had a positive lesbian icon, role model. And we could say to our mums, or we could say to our colleagues, we could say to people that just thought all lesbians were weirdos and inadequate and freaks. And what would you say about Martina Navratilova? And I'm telling you, we used your name so often amongst ourselves, but also to others. And it did make a huge difference for us. It was like you were standing there with us.
I thank you for that. I'm so glad that I didn't misbehave where you couldn't use my name that way. But I always felt that responsibility as a role model. I always thought about the kids first. And then when I came out, it was also a reflection on the LGBT community, certainly on women and lesbians more than anybody else. So I did feel that responsibility, but I always felt it to begin with to the kids. Like I didn't throw my racket, on the court. I didn't do anything that I was embarrassed about on the court because of athletes supposed to be role models, and I took that real seriously. But I'm glad that you you used my name in a good way, where the parents had no comeback. They couldn't say, "Oh, but she does this or she does that," because there was nothing there, because I didn't really do anything that was really, really bad.
You had all of that difficulties to deal with, but you just rose above it, and you're a warrior. And then through the years, you've become involved in lots of other social justice movements. You have spoken out about everything that is happening to women that you see, that you believe to be an injustice. And of course, we've spoken about Roe versus Wade being overturned in the US and what's happening in Iran with women. I mean, what's at the top of your list at the moment about abominations happening to women globally?
Oh, well, here in America, of course, it's the abortion right. I mean, it's gone so crazy that there are governors literally calling for the death penalty or for life incarceration of women that have an abortion. Healthcare is denied to girls at 12, 13, 14 who had some physical issues that had nothing to do with birth control, that need birth control pills. They are now denied care. Life-saving, doctor care is not allowed. It has gone so far to the right. Now they want to make it a federal law. It's really crazy, and we have an election here in a month, which I've been very active on trying to get people to vote, etc. But so that's America. Big steps backwards, and then of course worldwide, what's going on in Iran now, and all the Arab countries where women really have no rights or are very they're much smaller members of society. They don't have nowhere near equal rights. But that's been going on forever. But that's going the right direction, slowly but surely. But now we're having these fascist governments. Look at Meloni in Italy, Orban in Hungary. Who knows what's going on in Russia?
The nightmare.
So Bolsonaro may squeak out in Brazil, and it's all going backwards. Patriarchy on steroids. So yeah, the fight. It's funny. It's like we take a bunch of steps forward, but then there's some steps back that are just so unpredictable, like what happened here in America.
It is, and I suppose that's what galvanizes a new wave of feminism and rejuvenates those of us that have been feminists for a long time and keeps us going. Obviously, we'd rather not have to do this stuff. We'd rather solve patriarchy. We got rid of patriarchy tomorrow. There was no more rape, no more femicide, no more FGM. But right now, it feels like we're becoming more of a stronger global women's movement. We're connecting more.
I think so. And I think that's where the internet, I had such high hopes for the internet when it first came out. And I'm like, oh, this is great. Now you can spread truth around the world so quickly, but then you also can spread lies around the world so quickly. And the lie, as said that the lie goes all the way around the world before the truth straps its boots on. I think it was one of the presidents that said that, American presidents. So it's been a plus and a minus, but now, I think we just need to keep using it for good and keep shining the light. You just have to shine the light. Without that, there is no movement forward. And which is why you have to shine the light. You have to speak out, and you have to stand up for yourself, and you have to stand up for others. But also, we have to stand up for ourselves. If you don't stand up for yourself, you cannot expect somebody else to stand up for you. So
you're right. Yeah, absolutely. Which is why it breaks my heart when I see so many young women clearly under the cosh of the bearded so-called progressive men that are telling them porn is empowering, sex work is work, trans women are women, and you should accept them as your sexual partners. And these young women, I think they're starting to galvanize. There'll be many of them watching this right now at Filia. There's going to be a good number of young women, some of them brought by their mothers, some of them came to feminism through their own means without any feminist role model except for what they knew about through literature or through their college course if they were lucky, or they just happened to meet a feminist as we do, and it changes our lives. So what would you say to those young women who are facing this barrage of sexualization and men sending dick pics and spiking their drinks and hookup culture and all the stuff young women, heterosexual young women, are having to deal with right now?
I say be careful. I say stand up for yourself, hang out with friends and stay safe, and just keep fighting the fight. I mean, now with the lesbians as well, what's been happening in UK, dominoes are starting to fall, aren't they? Between Tavistock and the mermaids, they're getting their comeuppance, Stonewall. It's all coming to light. So, I'd say be aware, be involved, and be active. You have to, again, fight for yourself. As a youngster, you think, oh, it's all going to be okay. It doesn't really matter what I do. It's nothing makes a difference. Yes, everybody makes a difference. Why do we recycle? Maybe we have 100 bottles a year, but when everybody on where I live, it's like maybe 2,000 people, there's millions of bottles right there. So it all adds up. So even if you don't think you matter, you do matter. So, again, surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that will support you, that are positive, and just fight. You have to keep fighting.
You are someone that stands your ground, and you're also someone who, if you did get something wrong, if you did read something and take the wrong impression or fact from it, you would say,
oh, absolutely,
I got that wrong.
I try not to speak out. I try not to speak out on things that I don't know anything about. I try to educate myself first. But I thought I knew enough to say what I said about women's sports, and it turns out I was right. But anyway, I know what I don't know. Smart enough for that, which perhaps is the problem with people that are not that smart. They don't know what they don't know, and they don't care.
Will you just give a wave to the women at the conference and wish them well? And we all wish you well, Martina. We all love you. So it's been brilliant.
I'm just going to now ask Hilla and Lucy and Rosie to just sum up, just a minute, to say, give a little bit of advice to the young, new feminists as to how to cope with the misogynistic tidal wave that comes at you and how we can counter it. Any advice?
I would say not only, but I think it's obvious from all the women who come here. You came here to be together. But my advice to take it up a notch, don't only just come together with each other, share good food while you're at it. I really think food is love, and we do it for each other a lot. And I think it's really important to express your love in so many ways to each other. Buy flowers, have joy. I do have the best women's group in the world. Every woman is amazing. Every woman who chooses to be a collective member now is the boldest woman ever. We are all ordinary women who are willing to be under the extraordinary task here. So I just think constantly express the love to each other. It will keep us not just survive, but thrive.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree with what you've said, but also just for women to do whatever they feel comfortable in doing, but just make sure they do something. I'm self-employed, I can do and say whatever I want now, and I do, but I appreciate that a lot of women who work in certain organisations and certain industries, if they say too much, they will lose their livelihood. But just do what you can, even if it's sticking a sticker somewhere or sticking your fingers up behind someone's back or you know, whatever it is. But also, what I think is really important when we do it, and we do it en masse, is we just hold mirrors up to people's faces. You know, we're having to deal with the likes of Owen Jones, Billy Bragg, the Fox Shagger, these people who are just pure misogynists in plain sight. And really the tide has turned in this country. And I'm glad we're called Turf Island, because that's exactly what we are. And the whole world is looking at us. The whole world is looking at us because they've seen, unlike other countries, the tide has totally turned in this country, and we are one of the few places where we are fighting back against this lunatic trans ideology, and we're winning thanks to women like you.
What I really always say to the younger women at events like this is, don't lose your job, don't put yourself in danger, because we've got your back. And it's important that we all stick together. But at the same time, if you feel you can just talk to people, just educate them about what's going on, that's incredibly important, because so many people don't get to see it. They read articles like today's one in the Mail about me being a TERF or whatever, but the actual truth about what's happening at schools. I think a key thing as well is parents asking schools what their children are actually seeing. Some of them refuse to tell them, but keep an eye on that. Keep looking at public spaces and public services, government departments, and keep asking questions and writing letters and embarrassing politicians who just would rather look the other way, actually. So just keep at it, and thank you so much for all the support I've had, because I wouldn't be here without women like you.
I'm really excited to present to you now, all the way from Australia, a poet, a novelist and political commentator, who is the author of, this is really impressive, 2 novels, a verse novel, and 9 collections of poetry. And 30 years ago, along with Renette Klein, who I think is also here with us, hopefully, she founded Spinifex Press, which is an award-winning independent feminist press. Clearly well known in this room, which publishes innovative, controversial feminist books with an optimistic edge. Who could ask for anything more? How brilliant. Please, she's going to read a poem for us called Things a Lesbian Should Know. So I'm going to be sitting right there, listening avidly. Could you please give a massive round of applause, a really huge, warm filial welcome for Susan Hawthorne.
I would like to begin by acknowledging the Jiru people on whose lands I live and work in Australia. I'd also like to acknowledge all the women and the lesbians who have gone before us, some of whom have paid with their lives. Things a lesbian should know. That the lesbian is as old as humanity, and maybe older. How to conjugate the verb to love in any language. The walls of my cell are high. the stones thick, the time I've been here immeasurable, millennia. I am a political prisoner, and my crimes are made of love. We walked under the cedar trees outside the walls of the city. We kissed as the new moon set, as if time were going backwards. We troubled no one in the quietness of our passion, our robes hiding our faces, the near dark obscuring our movements, our tears. As the sun rose, we sang love songs to one another as we prepared to part. Then they came, the horsemen, wielding lances, tearing at our clothes, hauling us up behind them. We were abducted, raped, beaten, imprisoned. Why? We cried. For your crimes, they said. They would not allow us to speak, neither on our own behalf, nor to question their decisions. And so we languish. No one has begun a campaign to free us. The people say, why should we help them? They are abhorrent, they are vile. Every few centuries, we slip out into the world. They no longer remember we are here. When we escape, we find others. We create circles of passion. We shout our anger in those same streets near where we were once abducted. Soon the horsemen come again. Each time we are arrested, the weaponry has advanced. Vast investment and political will fastened into every notch. We have been strung up on pulleys, our fingers broken, we have been burnt, we have been drowned and declared innocent, we have been shot through with electrical charges. Whipped, stoned, and thrown from buildings, we have been drugged with every known poison. On each occasion, we were raped. For our own good, they say. The walls have not fallen. We prisoners still communicate by tapping our fingers against the walls. Today, they told me that forever was over. But I know better. I know them in ways they cannot imagine. The walls of my cell are high, but as before, I will keep on escaping.
Before I put the final piece of art and section of this part of the day in front of you, I would like to ask you to welcome a good friend who I've known for a long time working on this very, very important campaign. And she's going to come up and tell you about it, and I'd like you to give her a really warm round of applause, please. Wendy Davis.
I have dreamed on this mountain since first I was my mother's daughter, and you can't just take my dreams away. Not with me watching, you may drive a big machine, but I was born a great big woman, and you can't just take my dreams away without me fighting. It's all mountain, raised my many daughters. Some died young, some are still living. If you come here for the taking a mountain, well, we ain't come here to give it. I have dreamed, I have dreamed, I have dreamed.
Okay, hello everyone. I'd just like to know how many of you are filled with that wonderful feeling you get at Philia when there are hundreds of like-minded women in the room. So Rooms of Our Own want to create that same feeling in women's centres across the country. Some of you will know we've been campaigning to get a site to build a women's centre for some time now. And we've had lots of ups and downs with different local authorities and public bodies saying, oh yes, amazing idea, we'll find you a site, and we nearly got a site and then we lost the site. So we've decided that we're going to try and do this for ourselves. And in the words of the Holly Near song, we won't let them take our dreams away. We've lost enough. So we've set up a community benefit society, which we're calling Rooms London, but we're hoping that if it works, there'll be a Rooms Cardiff and a Rooms Glasgow and a Rooms Manchester, and we will share all the information with any women in those cities who want to replicate what we're doing. So the idea is that every person who supports the idea of women's centres, which would be owned by us in perpetuity, so as we couldn't be kicked out, have the rents raised, evicted, have the family silver sold off, but we would own it forever. And we do know that times are very hard. This is not a great time to be asking people for money. But we feel that women's centres would be doing so much to help with that situation for so many women and to provide affordable, accessible, safe, green, beautiful spaces for all the wonderful women's organisations out there. And you can pledge now. So payment won't be taken until we reach our target, which is a minimum $500,000, which we think would be sufficient to make us a serious deposit on our site. The way the project works is it will pay for itself eventually through cross-subsidy from housing. So at some time in the future, you would be able to withdraw your shares and get your money back. We assume most of you will regard this as more of a donation and an opportunity to be associated with an amazing idea. But if it all works out profitably, it is possible you'd even get some interest on your shares in a few years' time. So we know it sounds extremely ambitious. We need 10,000 people to buy £100 worth of shares, but there are 1,000 women just at this conference, so that would be a huge start. We know that not all of you can possibly afford that, but those of you who can, or maybe those of you who know other people who could, can spread the word around and see if we can reach this quite ambitious target. We're sure that you all know 10 people you could persuade to buy shares. We have postcards on our stall, which you can use to send to people that you think might be interested. So please try to pledge today, or come and visit our stall, talk to one of our volunteers. We'll help you with more information on how to complete the pledge, and you can read the share offer document and the business plan there. So hope that lots of you will feel able to contribute to this, and we'll make this thing happen. We will make it happen. Thank you.
I love the person I'm about to introduce you to. I came across her on Twitter, absolutely taking down the disappointment previously known as Billy Bragg. She is from Birmingham. I've just met her and her blooming lovely mum, who's out there. And she hopes to make the world a better place through the power of music. And she has given lyrics her own feminist spin. She's going to perform, she's aware that her feminist lyrics might provide a sort of roadblock to her musical career, but she's thrown herself completely into the fight for liberation for all women, nonetheless, and is going to do so and carry on regardless. So we're all in support of that, and she's certainly going to get a lot of love when she comes on, I know that. She's going to do 2 songs, and one of them she's written specially for us at Hilla. It's about sisterhood and solidarity, and it's a song for you and every woman standing shoulder to shoulder with her sisters. We stand together. Let's really make a lot of loving noise. Big, loud, clapping, cheering, please, for Nehanda.
Wow. I told myself I wasn't going to be overwhelmed, and I'm covered in goosebumps, and my brain's like, this is incredible. When I started music, I had no idea where it was going to take me. And sort of last night I was lying in bed thinking, what am I going to say tomorrow morning? And I just think this is where I was meant to be. When I started doing music, like I say, I had no idea where I was going to end up. The music I write is for every face sitting here right now. This is my people. I'm a very nervy person before I get on stage, but this is the first time I've been on stage knowing how much support I've got in the audience. Like, everybody here, we're all on each other's side, and that is incredible. So this first song you may have heard, it's one I wrote during lockdown. I was finding it really difficult, sat at my kitchen table. I felt like all I could do was tweet, and I felt like I needed to do something more. So I wrote this song for someone that we might know. It's a woman, she's written a few books about a wizard, J.K. Rowling. So this one I wrote for J.K. Rowling just because she's an incredible woman, but it's dedicated to every woman, and it's called I Am Woman. Yeah, la da dee da 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 da. I feel like words aren't enough, but your silence is deafening, so I call your bluff. Your quietude is deadly, my words are a bomb. Your stillness is the detonator, my words are wrong, but I still speak them. You can tell me later, 'cause I don't, quite frankly, give a damn. I'm woman, so take me as I am. And I'm handy with a pen, I'm handy with a pen, and I speak my words with truth so you could try to follow me. I'll tell you it's no use, 'cause I can show you the way, but still you can't walk in my shoes and see my heart is pure, and so I've got nothing to lose. And I don't, quite frankly, give a damn. I'm woman, so take me as I am. Take me as I am. Shoo-doo-doo-dee-da-dee-da-da. La-da-da-dee-da-da-da-da. Yeah. I feel like words aren't enough, but your silence is deafening, so I call your bluff. Your quietude is deadly, my words are a bomb. Your stillness is the detonator, my words are wrong, but I still speak them. You can tell me later. I don't, quite frankly, give a damn. I'm woman, so take me as I am. Take me as I am. Yeah. Shoo-doo-doo-dee-da-dee-da-da. La-da-da-dee-da-da-da-da. Yeah. I feel like words aren't enough, but your silence is deafening, so I call your bluff. Your quietude is deadly, my words are a bomb. Your stillness is a detonator, my words are wrong, but I still speak them. You can tell me later. I don't, quite frankly, give a damn. I'm woman, so take me as I am. Take me as I am.